As you know, sporting events have been canceled for the next month or two due to the COVID-19 virus. But you might be wondering, how have esports been affected by the virus? They don't have physical contact and you can just play from home, right? Well, I'm here to break it down for you. First, we need to cover how esports function on a normal basis without the COVID-19 virus. During a normal time, how an esport functions varies greatly from game to game. There are games such as League of Legends and Overwatch that are team-based games. The teams in these leagues compete in regularly scheduled matches for a shot at entering the worldwide tournament with the largest prize pool each year. I'm more familiar with Overwatch, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how Overwatch specifically handles these things. In Overwatch, there are a number of teams that are based in specific cities. Other teams will travel to that city to play in a large arena for an audience. However, there are other games that don't function like these team-based games. Games like Super Smash Bros. Or other fighting games. Those games are usually set up in tournament formats, where every major event is a large tournament where players bring their setups to the tournament and compete all at once. There can be up to hundreds of people in these venues with their own setups, with hundreds of matches going on. The important thing to note is that many professional esports events are held in person and not online. As you can probably guess, this causes a major problem when the COVID-19 outbreak happens. So how do esports organizations handle this new reality of the COVID-19 outbreak? Once again, it varies greatly from game to game. For many games, there's a big issue that needs to be addressed in order for these events to continue, and that is latency. Latency is how long it takes a command to register from the time you press a button or key to the time the action happens on the server. In esports, every millisecond in your reaction counts. And if there's latency, then that means that one team might be at a competitive disadvantage. This problem is usually solved by having teams meet up and play together in what's called a LAN tournament. And this just means that two teams come together and play on the same network, so that there's no difference in the latency. And once again, this causes a problem when we are in this COVID-19 stay-separated environment. Organizations like the Overwatch League have chosen just to rearrange their schedules so that teams are only playing against other teams that are on the same regional server. However, there are other organizations, like the League of Legends Championship Series, that have just chosen to postpone all their matches until further notice. And yet there are still others, like Super Smash Bros., who have no option but to cancel their events. So it's hard to give a simple answer to the question of how are esports being affected by the COVID-19 outbreak. Now, you might be wondering, how has the Greenville University esports team been affected by the outbreak? I was able to speak with GU esports coach BJ Fink to ask him about it.
Yeah, so my name is BJ Fink. I am the head coach for Greenville University esports, which, has a lot to it.
So how has the coronavirus affected esports at GU?
Yeah, so luckily, video games is something obviously we can play online and interact with each other still. But I think one of the benefits we saw was that people could come into the studio and they could see each other and game with each other there. And you saw, honestly, there was a super strong bond between quite a few of them. But now that they're not able to play, and some of them don't even have systems at home, so they can't even play like Trey. Trey left his computer here in his dorm room over spring break because obviously he was planning on coming back, and so he doesn't have that at home. He doesn't have a console, so all that's here. So the part of that was on campus and everybody hanging out obviously is gone. I think esports overall, out of any other department, or whether it's a sport or academics, has the best shot at creating what we can virtually. But it definitely, I don't think it can still replace being there in person. But we can definitely adapt probably better than most.
How have you seen the virus affect the greater esports scene?
There's a lot of the tournament organizations that did a pause, and then a lot of them are revamping. And it's interesting that, so yes, we can do things online as esports, but it's almost as if those organizations don't understand that not everybody that was on a college, like a university team, because some of those leagues are still going. It's almost as if they don't realize on the flip side that some of those students can't play from home. And it's like, well, you just sub in a player that can, and you're like, well, that's not a fair opportunity to everyone. And I think we've seen that with esports as a whole. It's not built to be fair to all the different types of people that play.
Yeah.
And I think this virus is showing that a little more. This, we're stuck. Some of us don't have equipment. We can't compete. We can't practice. So you're going to be super lucky winning a tournament when your team, all of you are wealthy enough to have like $5,000 computers at your house and can, all practice and play together. And I mean, that's not the situation for the majority of Americans at this point. We've seen some recruiting sites have pushed back some different events they were doing. One of the biggest impacts on us, and I think this will just affect everything as well around the globe, is that there are restrictions now on travel bans, and some nations are shut down, and so like for us, we were going to have an esports event in Madrid through that, was it SIS, I think is the company name. They're an athletic recruiting group that already works kind of with us on our other sports, and they were going to do an esports event. That I haven't heard anything on that, but obviously it's in Spain, which is on super lockdown. So that's not going to happen. But thinking that normally international students with their visas, they normally get those in the summer. We don't even know what enrollment looks like with those until the summer, but now that might get pushed back. So thinking of how we can even reach international students. So like I opened up a GU Esports WhatsApp business account to, hey, anybody internationally can like talk to us on WhatsApp now. Like thinking of ways to be kind of creative like that. And I think you're seeing that just across the board with the esports is recruiting is going to be down, especially on the high school level, organizing things when the high schools are shut down. And a lot of those students relied on high school equipment to play. Now they can no longer host their events, and how you even plan for that in the future. And some students, and I think this is, I don't know, maybe reminiscent of something we've seen before, but maybe even a new problem, but it's the idea that when students, and some of us thought the same way when, as we were growing up, oh, well, this is not open. I can't practice right now. Therefore, I'm not going to be good enough to join a college team at this point because I don't have access to practice. So they just like stop trying and don't apply and don't engage with universities or whatever level they're at. And you're like, no, like we all understand what's going on. We will still let you come to school and be a part of our team. We will do what we can to get everybody back up to speed, when we reopen, when this is all done. But we've seen a huge drop in just students doing things or thinking that they can still. And that's kind of just I don't know how to address that myself, but that's been a big effect on the esports scene, I think.
As you now know, the transition during the COVID-19 outbreak is not as simple as just moving esports online. There are still some problems that arise, even for esports. With that said, through the likes of Twitch and YouTube and other streaming platforms, there are still plenty of ways to find gaming entertainment during this time.